Excellencies, honorable members, and representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and guests, it is my great honor and privilege to stand before this distinguished assembly of brilliant minds and renowned policymakers at a time when our global community is at its most urgent need for unity, cooperation, and common purpose. This extraordinary forum, live-streamed around the world, represents the exhilarating realization of a long-standing vision of my wife, Sharon, and I have shared passionately for many, many years. We are everlasting partners in a devoted enterprise of international hope and inspiration, co-conspirators in a fervent advocacy of comprehensive social change and universal accountability, and doting parents committed to the brightest future imaginable for our children, for your children, and for all of humanity. Together, we offer our deepest gratitude to our gracious Indonesian hosts and friends, to the Minister of Defense, Republic of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto. Thank you. Coordinating Minister for Maritime and Investment, Luhut Panjaitan. Thank you. To Annie and Hashim Dojo Hadikusumo, thank you very much. You all have been instrumental in the realization of this Global Food Security Summit. Thank you and God bless. Our sincerest appreciation is extended to Fred Kempe, Matthew Kronig of the Atlantic Council, and the Scowcraft Center for Strategy and Security. Thank you very much. To our American policymakers and their international counterparts, and we thank the people of the world for their faith and fortitude as we reaffirm our solemn pledge to deliver both equity and equality to those who have been so woefully deprived. The recognition of food as a human right was established nearly 80 years ago. President Roosevelt, as well as leaders of 48 other nations, convened in Hot Springs, Virginia, for the United Nations Conference of Food and Agriculture. This conference was particularly unlike the ones we are all participating in today. The outcome? A universal Declaration of Human Rights. Within that declaration, not only is the right to food proclaimed, the right to adequate food as an essential facet to an individual and family standard of living is stated. In the near century, since this crucial mandate and cornerstone of the FAO, 192 member nations and organizations have stood side by side, linked in a tireless battle against the insidious plague of food insecurity and all forms of malnutrition, guided by the enduring motto, Fiat Panis, let there be bread. Towards that moral imperative, there have been meaningful strides made, critical lessons learned, transformative policies enacted, cutting-edge technologies developed, and a salient goal set to end hunger by 2030. But as history has proven time and again, we exist in a rapidly changing and unpredictable world. The processes established to successfully transport food to where it needs to go before the COVID-19 and before the invasion of Ukraine no longer work. Over the last 3 years, these concerted efforts and best intentions to stem the tide of global undernourishment have stalled. They continue to grow stagnant against the prevalence and extremes of climate change, the the spread of protracted regional conflict, and the economic impact of the pandemic, and the carnage and chaos currently ravaging parts of Eastern Europe. The harsh truths and painful realities of these calamitous setbacks are glaring. And 828 million people worldwide will go to bed hungry tonight. How can it be that in the United States, the wealthiest nation in the world, 1 in every 8 children still go to bed hungry every single night? In my own home city of Los Angeles, every 1 in 5 people experience food insecurity, unsure of when or from where their next meal will be. Globally, 45 million children under the age of 5 are suffering. They are suffering from acute malnutrition, their small bodies chronically deprived of essential nutrients, stunting physical, cognitive, and social development, and making them especially vulnerable to infectious disease and drastically elevated mortality rates. They face educational limitations, behavioral problems, lifetime earning reductions, and a perpetuation of the same vicious malnutrition cycle passed on to their own children. The numbers are staggering, the trends and projections alarming, and the insidious endurance of this most pervasive and devastating human affliction, of which no country or region is immune, remains wholly and consciously and utterly indefensible. Socioeconomic determinants of health explain this cycle. Poverty, race, ethnicity, gender, employment status, education, immigration status are all notable factors. The direct link between these factors and food security is undeniable. Try as some might, there can be no reasonable debate over the breadth of this humanitarian crisis. No credible arguments to be made against the merits of remediated action. No partisan interpretations, conflicting ideologies, or wavering convictions. We must all agree that no man, no woman, and no child should ever suffer through or die from hunger again. Yet, as we all know, there is no quick fix. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Food security is a complex puzzle of mismatched and missing pieces. The complete picture is an interconnected web of contributing factors explained by the socio-economic determinants of health, each fraught with significant issues of their own. Currently, the greatest world crisis hindering food security is the war in Ukraine. It has affected and impacted the globalized agricultural and energy markets at a time when supply chains were already reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic. Every day, I track and appraise the innumerable impacts this war has had business of global exports. Exports of vital nutrients have been interrupted. Future harvests been put in jeopardy. The energy markets sent reeling, fertilizer prices sent soaring, and the cost of wheat continuing to skyrocket. Russia and Ukraine, two world bread baskets, major producers and exporters of vital commodities and energy, engaged in a conflict that threatens to push many millions and more into poverty and food insecurity. Establishing food and energy security is an urgent issue affecting us now. But the future forecasts are sobering. At this rate, the dire ramification will continue to grow exponentially. The systems that we put in place and the choices we make now will determine the security of our children, and our grandchildren will inherit. Like many of you in the audience, I have tasted the horrors of war, choked on the repugnant stench of violent death and destruction. My work through my company, Unity Resources Group, has taken me to hotspots around the world, where I have borne sad witness to the heroism and self-sacrifice of young men and women slaughtered in the blink of an eye before their earthly journeys had ever begun. I have seen whole families raised, 3 generations decimated in the wake of a contemptible missile strike on civilian targets. And I have watched helplessly as tormented mothers weep over the broken bodies of their murdered children, soaked in their blood, praying for merciful relief from a living nightmare that will never come. I stand before you today as a proud American, devoted to the venerated principles of my country, fallible and human in an imperfect world. I am humbled by the education I have received, the experiences I have had, and the many blessings God has given me. I count each one with eternal gratitude, none more absolute than my ability to consistently put food on my table, to ensure the health and well-being of my beloved family, a luxury of which countless parents around the world are so cruelly deprived. I appeal and relate to you as an anxious father, deeply troubled and guilt-ridden over an inexcusable legacy of widespread confusion, conflict, and chaos all of our children will likely be forced to inherit. I implore you, as a member of the human race, mortified by the unnecessary suffering of even a single brother or sister, furious over the goals we have missed, the priorities we have misplaced, the opportunities we have squandered, but still greatly emboldened by the prospect of providing my children, your children, and the children of the world, children of the world with the well-deserved birthright of dignity, security, and essential rights to work together collectively to propose solutions to this long-lasting issue we are facing. To accomplish this mission, to bring food and comfort to those most in need, we must delay the procrastinations, abandon the rhetoric, and accept unpopular truths as a call to action and not an excuse to passivity. In an idle world where socio-economic factors existed in harmony, void of biases, inequities would be reduced, and chronic illnesses caused by malnutrition's many forms would be mitigated. But that beautiful dream still stands as a tall order. At the Gaurav and Sharon Srivastava Family Foundation, we will assist in the creation of a new paradigm between food and fuel to the body, and energy as the fuel to the food production system, a new perspective that will drive a propulsive shift to a nutritionally nourished world. We must understand and embrace the symbiotic relationship between food and energy. An unavoidable reality we must bear is that our current food systems are even more reliant on energy than ever before. As a foundation, we are doing our concerted part to illuminate the intersection of food and energy, adding a voice to a crucial conversation about the necessity of energy production to deliver the food to those in need. While we all dream of a near future in which clean and renewable energy is not just a lofty ambition about the everlasting law of the land, I implore you today to entreat to welcome the notion that lines of food production cannot exist isolated from the energy that propels their productivity. It is our human obligation to focus our efforts on the problems we are facing here and now. It is our universal imperative to take immediate action to relieve the men, women, and children who are suffering today, not tomorrow, not next week, and not in 50 years. While our days of fossil fuel dependence are numbered, we also agree that the immediate and complete eradication of oil reliance is still beyond our grasp. Modern agriculture runs on oil. Commercial farmers need tractors, irrigation pumps, harvesters, the fertilizers that feed the crops, the pesticides that preserve them, the packaging that protects their quality are all produced using oil. From seed to harvest, packaging to storage, containers to ship, trucks to roads, these supply chains lead to food, the focus of conservation today. Food that cannot be brought to the homes of hungry families so that the mothers and fathers never have to ration their children's food and hear the cries of their hungry child, or give up their own meal so their child doesn't have to experience the pangs of hunger. These are harsh realities. As we diligently march towards the gradual decarbonization, fossil fuels remain our most realistic and expeditious improvisation for addressing the most adverse food system lines to ensure food security. This is the physical, literal, realistic change to be able to deliver on the promise established 80 years ago on the right to adequate food. The United States has always been looked as a shining beacon of hope, a gateway to humanity's future, founded on the unimpeachable virtues of liberty, equality, and steadfast in the ethical imperatives of welfare, justice, and dignity, and driven boldly to lead by example. By expanding the scope of our Feed the Future initiative, our President, Biden, has reaffirmed our unfaltering commitment. It is a time for all of us, as we collectively represent the world's 20 largest economies, to work together and build on the progress we have already made. We must fearlessly continue the copious work that still lies ahead of us. It's time to show our citizens, our foreign neighbors, our fellow men and women, that our promises are not empty, that our outrage is real and conviction is unwavering, just like the superheroes our children imagine us to be. This forum, these conversations, and the discourse to follow today, I mark this as a compelling watershed in our struggles. But we cannot forget that at this very moment, across America, single parents are shopping for groceries, forced by insufficient budgets to choose between fresh vegetables and lean proteins that will feed their children for 2 days, or boxes of far less nutritious pasta that provide for an entire week. A heartbreaking plight nobody should face, not in 2022, not ever. These are difficult choices to be made, sobering concessions to digest, and a pragmatic roadmap to be plotted that prioritize grace and humanity over politics and caustic saber rattling. These are discussions we need to have today to influence that parent's ability not to choose between aiding short-term hunger or choosing long-term health for their family. It's very basic. We must devise alternative plans to keep the energy flowing, to stabilize market shocks, to mitigate a deepening energy crisis, and reopen the plentiful grain gates of Russia and Ukraine to the world. Plans conceived with redundant safety nets, oversight, and adaptability, born with the spirit of pragmatic neutrality, intended as a less aggressive, non-interventionist proxy to the imposition of price caps that do not work. We need a program that can be managed and maintained through clear and transparent reporting mechanisms, with banking support from trustworthy institutions and multifaceted administrative superiors. A program that needs to be crystallized, that in short order will adequately feed the hungry, comfort the afflicted, and dramatically rebuke the all too comfortable warmongers and profiteers who pose the greatest threat to peace and security on a global scale. And most importantly, we need a confident first step in the right direction, a bridge towards progress and resolution, a gleam of contagious hope that every living soul on this planet is urgently in need of. My wife, Sharon, and I are blessed with 2 young children. Our divine inspiration, we watch them play in wonderment, interacting harmoniously with all other children, the ones that look and speak like them, and the ones that don't. They are the future, our legacy, and our source of tremendous clarity and reflection. Their unconditional love and universal acceptance humbles me and sometimes makes me embarrassed to be a grown-up. Sharon and I firmly believe that the answers we seek are simple and infinitely achievable. We just have a history of making the journey unexplainably complex. All of us in this room and on this planet must commit to a solemn covenant, impervious to race, gender, socioeconomic, or geographical divides, an unbreakable promise to all generations that have and will come to be, that every human citizen on this earth will soon be guaranteed the dignity and respect they inherently deserve. Of the question, where do we go from here? The inspirational leader and civil rights visionary Martin Luther King declared, "Our world is bruised and battered by a universal blight that knows no boundaries, an epidemic that does not discriminate, an abomination that won't be solved without compromise, compassion, and undivided resolve. We must steel our conviction, draw our strength from a higher power, and learn from our children that we must, from now on until the very end of time. It is our only hope." Thank you. Thank you. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce a true champion of defense and security, an Indonesian patriot an emissary of global peace and unity, a bridge builder towards the abolition of all food security, and a brave line front warrior in the battle against the grave threats that undermine health, prosperity, and wreak havoc on the very fabric of society. The Minister of Defense, Republic of Indonesia, and my dear friend, Prabowo Subianto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita sekalian. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants of the Global Food Security Conference organized by the Atlantic Council. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak, to give some remarks on this topic. Since yesterday, I took note that a lot of participants coming from many parts of the world with their impressive background and expertise in the field of agriculture, food security, and I'm sure by the brief moments I was here, I'm very confident that all the contributions, all the remarks, all the comments, the suggestions, recommendations will, of course, I understand, be compiled, and I think this will be a very valuable contribution to finding solutions for the threat of global food insecurity that is facing our planet. Actually, I would like to thank and commend the initiators of this conference, Mr. Fred Kempe and the Atlantic Council, General Wesley Clark, Mr. Gaurav. I call him Mr. G because sometimes a bit difficult to pronounce your surname. It's also difficult to pronounce my surname. I think my surname is longer than your surname. I would like to thank the initiators for this effort. In fact, in my opinion, the main topic of the whole G20 summit should be about food security. In my opinion, food security, or shall we say the threat of food insecurity, is an existential threat to humankind, because Without food, there is no civilization, there is no humankind. Because of the experts attending here, I do not pretend or aspire to give an expert's perspective. I will give an overview of the Indonesian perspective on this issue. And perhaps this can help contribute to our general understanding. First of all, food, energy, and water actually is one cycle that is interrelated. To secure food, we need water. Water is the essence of life. And to secure food, the speakers before me have emphasized the importance of energy. In this cycle, which in front of us has proven to be a threat of scarcity. This is compounded by more threats that compound this existential threat. First, whether we like it or not, there is a population explosion. Maybe this is sensitive. There are part of the global elite still very influential, still very powerful, even in my country, that do not like for us to talk about population explosion. But if we are a real leader, sometimes leaders must say unpleasant things. This is a dilemma, it's a paradox, especially for politicians. Especially for politicians who want to get elected. Fortunately, the Indonesian general election and the presidential election is still rather in the future. This is the dilemma of people in leadership position. If we warn about a danger coming, they accuse us of being pessimistic. My President Jokowi, this year alone, I think has spoken maybe 25 times more in public, warning the Indonesian people that we are facing difficult times. Next year will be very difficult. And there are people who accuse him of spreading pessimism. And I understand, maybe some people cannot accept the necessities of how do we face this population explosion. For instance, Indonesia, our increase in population every year is 1.9%. That is 5 million new babies every year. 5 million new mouths. 5 million. The size of Singapore. Every year in Indonesia, there is a new Singapore. You see, Indonesians, when they face adversity, they laugh. Indonesians are happy people. Sometimes we don't know what's ahead of us. maybe we will go somewhere happily. What I'm saying is this: every 10 years, a new Malaysia. What government in the world, what expert in the world can consider feeding 5 million more mouths a normal and an easy challenge? My friend Mr. G has said he's very proud of feeding his family. A leader of Indonesia must think of feeding 5 million babies every year. Every year. Anybody who wants to run for president of Indonesia, I think, should consult his psychoanalyst, I think. The challenges in front of our government is not an easy challenge, but this is not something that we must be afraid of. As a former soldier, you know, they say former soldiers, old soldiers never die. They just fade away. General Clark has faded away today. He's supposed to be here in front of me. But, you know, many old soldiers, like myself, like General Clark, you know, old soldiers never die. They just fade away. That is somewhere. But in Indonesia, old soldiers never die and they never fade away. Until the Almighty God calls us. Then not only do we fade away, we are called away very fast. So this population explosion is something in front of us. 5 million jobs, 5 million new spaces in schools, in hospitals. This is the dimension of our challenge. Climate change. We feel it. Jakarta is, the sea level is increasing 5 centimeters every year. And during one of my visits to the coastal area of Tanjung Priok, families, the water is in their living room. They are sleeping in their bedroom with the seawater in their bedroom. Climate change is not some theory. It is in front of us. In Kerawang, which is maybe 1 hour from here, the sea has come in maybe already at least 3-4 kilometers. 3-4 kilometers, maybe more. Kerawang lebih banyak ya. Kerawang sudah berapa kilo itu masuknya? Ya. Kerawang, you are from Kerawang, are you? 3-4 kilometer. Gue baru ngomong 4 kilometer dari. Pinter aja loh. This is the speaker of the West Java Parliament. So climate change for Indonesia is real. Can you imagine 4 kilometers times 200 kilometers long? 300 square kilometers. How many hectares have we lost from productive land, from arable land, from our rice bowl? Kerawang is the rice bowl of Indonesia. And of course, in front of us, geopolitical conflict. I just would like to reiterate, you know, Indonesia, our traditional foreign policy is one of friendship to all countries. We respect all countries. We respect all great powers. we are free and active in our relationship, we always try to maintain equal in our respect and relationship. We consider ourselves, by history, Indonesia was one of the founders of the non-aligned movement. I would like to reiterate this because although we consider United States as a very good friend and strategic partner of Indonesia, the United States having many times assisted Indonesia in our darkest moments. The United States have supported our war of independence. So we acknowledge this friendship, but as a good friend, sometimes we have to be courageous enough to remind our friends, remind our close friend who we admire, who we want to emulate. I think the top Indonesian intellectuals, educated leaders, most of them are educated in Western countries. I think many of our leaders understand and have read your Declaration of Independence. We also aspire to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is our goal also for our people. But this is important. In any geopolitical conflict, there are always two sides to a story. And each side is convinced they are right. Each side is willing to die for what they consider to be right. I have to remind everybody, there is always two sides to a conflict. The important thing is, do we want to resolve the conflict or not? If we do not want to resolve the conflict, we are entering a very dangerous region and a dangerous zone of time. A few days ago, I was listening to a remark by a very senior former United States military leader, Admiral Mullen. I think 3 days ago. I think Admiral Mullen was the former chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Please correct me if I'm... He was the former chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. He reminded everybody, it's on the YouTube, we are in danger of a nuclear war. We are in danger of a nuclear war. We hope, we pray that the leaders of the world will be wise and enlightened. But we have seen in history many great conflict, many great explosion, conflagration happen out of accident. Wars happen because of accidents. Sometimes wars happen because of one lieutenant or one captain who start firing because he was afraid. Therefore, what we talk about is compounded by these threats. Geopolitical conflict on all matters, in our opinion, the situation of the world, the fact that our planet is getting smaller, we need wisdom, we need compromise, we need patience, we need the courage to go halfway. Zero-sum game victories, I don't think is feasible in the current state of the world. We can be right, but are we doing it in the long-term interest of our people? Without food, energy, and water, economic crisis, social unrest, civil war, failed state. Therefore, food, energy, and water is existential. Indonesia, we have been blessed the last 3-4 years with very consistent and very big rainfall. However, now we have to be prepared. After the phenomena called La Nina, we have to be prepared for El Nino, and when El Nino comes, we have to be prepared for several years of dry weather. Therefore, it's also part of our initiative, the Indonesian defense community. We are working very hard to secure water. We are exploring for water in the dry parts of our country. I think last 2-3 years, our military, we have drilled and we have made pumps, energy in something like 700 sites. And within this month, our defense university, we have sent survey teams, and we will drill, I think, another 120 water pumps. And also, what is very interesting is there is a new geological phenomena, actually. The experts tell us there are underwater rivers flowing to the coast of many of our islands. And this is very, very, very prevalent in volcanic islands. And we are, I think, the largest island groups with volcanoes. There are many underwater rivers flowing every day to the coast. And now our mission is to find where it goes out and then to trap them in flexible pipes and bring by pumps this fresh water to the land, inland, to the villages. So actually, the existential threat, there are solutions in front of us, and solutions which are not technologically very difficult for us. It flows every day, every hour. We have also big rivers that are flowing to the sea, and with water management, with water engineering, we can make very, very good use of the water that's available. The key is the will to find solutions. When we talk about food security, there are some things, again, that's unpalatable to be spoken of, but I will say it anyway. Slide selanjutnya. How do we deal with food insecurity? To be very frank, if the political elites of all countries have cohesion, are united, do not fight amongst the elite who wants to be what. And the elite are informed, want to learn, want to study. And the elite will not be swayed, will not be influenced by traders. I want to make it clear, I'm not against traders. I was, before going into politics, I was a trader myself. Trade, business, that is what fuels human growth and human enterprise. But in this matter of food security, sometimes the traders think short term. The political leaders must think long term. The traders think of annual profit. It's not their fault. They are traders. They think of annual profit. Political leaders must think 5 years, 10 years, 25 years ahead. But sadly, many countries, including my own country, sometimes our elite are nearsighted, uninformed, sometimes do not want to be informed. I have been talking about food security in Indonesia, I think, for the last, 20 years. When I retired from the military, I was elected as a chairman of the Farmers Association. And after that, I was elected also as the chairman of the Small Market Traders Association. Maybe many of them come here to listen to me. We have what now? Something like 16,000 traditional markets. 16,000. And always the challenge is between the big supermarkets and the small traditional markets. How do we reconcile that they live together, not killing? The big guys absorb all the profit, and the small guys die because of lack of oxygen. This is the challenge again. And many of our elites also, now after we see the conflict in other parts of the world, after the FAO, the WHO remind us, then now everybody talk about food security. But let me say very frankly, maybe 3 years ago, many of our elite do not even want to address the matter of food insecurity. So I think this is something that we must take note of. And therefore, events like this is very important as part of the educating the elite. Solving hunger, solving food insecurity, yes, it's about seeds, about technology, about this and that, and yes, but more important is the unity, the cohesion, the ability amongst national elites and international elites to work together. To cooperate. And this is easier said than done. I do understand that. So our goal must be, as all the experts say, feeding 8 billion people. The problem is availability and affordability. The problem is some of the countries have secure supply of calories and secure supply of protein. And that is the challenge, how we can reach zero hunger, which is SDG number 2, the Sustainable Development Goal that we must all aspire to. Here we see the dark green those countries secure calorie supply, and the dark blue secure protein supply. Food security, the essential thing is also trade, food trade. We see many countries that are reliant on calorie imports. We thank the Almighty God that Indonesia actually, we need not be reliant on calorie imports. We are now self-sufficient in rice. We are also able to produce maize on our own, and we have alternatives to wheat. The other essential element of food security, as everybody has mentioned, of course, is synthetic fertilizer. Half of the world is reliant on synthetic fertilizer. Also, the reserves of potash and phosphate is also not distributed equally around the world. It's concentrated in Canada, Russia, some parts of the world. This will affect global food production, and therefore, once again, let us not be morally upset about the use of food as weapon. Food has always been a weapon throughout the history of mankind. Thousands of years. Wars have erupted to secure food, to secure land, to secure water. So let us be very realistic, ladies and gentlemen. That's why leaders must always calculate the entire spectrum of the threat. As a former military officer, we learned that war is not just the beginning, or the war start with the firing of a shot. No. War is already a spectrum. Trade, competition is war. Financial war. We can destroy a nation by destroying their currency. So, once again, leaders must always think the entire spectrum. Because, as I said, a conflict has two sides. One side may be strong in this area, the other side maybe is strong in the other area. And two conflict sides, they want to win, they want to survive. Therefore, they will use all weapons at their disposal. That is the lesson of history. Fertilizer will be strategic. Because of the source of fertilizers, source of the ingredients of fertilizer, we must be prepared for daunting challenges ahead. We all know, everybody's talked about the vicious, the cycles that are emerging, food price increasing, oil very high, the price of natural gas is already 10 times higher than 2 years ago in Europe. Cost of maritime trade, 3 times pre-pandemic average. Interest rates rising, price of fertilizers increase, and this results in cost of living increase, real incomes falling down, the ability to cope small families, farmers, decreasing, the financial power of several countries decreasing. What is the result? We have to be prepared for social and political unrest in many parts of the globe. Some more figures, wheat price have risen 200% in 2 years. Palm oil, nearly 200% in 2 years. Indonesia, very fortunate, we are the largest producer of palm oil. And at one time, we were embargoed by Europe, our palm oil. But it turned out perhaps to be a blessing in disguise. Because we could not go to the European market, we are forced to use our palm oil for biofuel, for biodiesel, and now we have biogasoline. Sometimes threat, sometimes adversity result in opportunity. So maize, sugar, soybean. We understand also the components of food, that energy, very strong component. A lot of people have spoken about this. Corn, high component. Soybean, wheat, I think nearly 40%, 38% component is energy. Rice, not so high. Peanuts, not so high. Protein crisis in the next 25 years. The demand for protein will rise quite significantly from now around 324 million tons a year to nearly 600 million tons. 80% increase in the next 25 years. And like it or not, I think we have to reassess the propensity or our habit of eating a lot of meat from cattle, from chicken, from pork, because the input for 1 kilogram of body weight meat, we need for cattle is 31 kilograms of input. For pork is 10 kilograms, for chicken is 4 kilograms. The most efficient is fish, 2 kilograms, and some even 1.7 kilograms. So the future is actually aquaculture to provide our protein needs. This is force of nature. Those who adapt, those who want to learn, those who want to invest will survive. And actually, the resources are in front of us. Once again, Indonesia is blessed by the Almighty God. We have many challenges, but we have a lot of sea. I think we have one of the largest, the longest coastline in the world. I think maybe Canada and Chile, more than us. But Indonesia is, maybe we are second to Canada, I think. The longest coast. Can you imagine how many hectares of aqua farms we can have on the coast and off the coast? We have now 23 million hectares of arable land. But we have also 120 million hectares of forest. sad to say, about 80 million hectares of our forest are degraded, are already degraded. So, what is our vision? What is my strategy, which I proposed to my president, that the degraded forest we convert to productive land to create food and energy. They are already degraded, but before they supported forests. That means the land is fertile by the greed of many short-term, how can I say that in an audience that's a lot of Americans here, you know? Because, right? But I would say that many capitalists are very greedy. Even some capitalists, they are proud. They say greed is good. That is the essence, I think, of neoliberalism, right? There are capitalists say greed is good. Let me be richer and richer, and I don't care what happened to the poor and the hungry, you know. Once again, I do not criticize capitalism per se, but I'm saying we have suffered. It's not anybody's fault, it's our collective fault. Whenever God has given so much blessings to a people, sometimes the people become complacent and the people become negligent in protecting their resources and their future. So, can you imagine if the 80 million hectares or 88 million, I think the data is there, yeah. If we convert only 16 million, our Bapanas, our planning agency calculated 16 million of those 80 million degraded. If we convert this to food production, we can be the bread basket of the world. So, this existential threat and this, let us say, ecological or environmental disaster, we can turn around to be environmental and food opportunity for the world. It does not, we do not need too much technology. We do not need, the nature has given us this, let us say, comparative advantage. 16 million hectares, let us say 8 million for food and 8 million for energy. We can produce renewable energy, clean energy, bioenergy from a lot of plants, from palm oil, from aren, palm sugar, from cassava. We also, we are in a tropical climate. We can have 3 crops a year. 3 crops a year. With good management, good technology, good management, can you imagine the increase in production? We also have 225 million hectares of marine territory. We also have, within that area, there's 23 million hectares of marine protected area. This is the breeding ground where our fish, the fish of the world, come to Indonesia to breed and to lay their eggs. The fish of the world breed in Indonesian waters, lay their eggs in Indonesian waters. So, Indonesia's current role. We are now #1 grower of palm oil. We are now #5 grower of cassava, without the additional 16 million hectares of land. We are now the #2 producer of captured fisheries. But we have a vacuum. We have a need for 40,000 fishing boats of 300 gross ton to 500 gross ton. We have a need of 40,000 fishing boats. This is not including the aqua farm that we plan to build. By the way, if any of the participants are still here on the 15th or on the 16th, I will be visiting a fish aqua farm. If any of you would like to join me, I will be very honored if you would like to see that this is not a dream in the future. We are already, some of our entrepreneurs are already carrying this out. And by the way, making a lot of money. But that is the risk, high gain. To be the pioneer is always very courageous, need courage. We are the #1 grower of seaweed, healthy protein, antioxidant. It's against cancer. And we are now already, alhamdulillah, self-sufficient in rice production. Kita sudah swasembada beras. So I think joining Jokowi in this government, I think, was a correct decision on my part. I'm proud that I joined. Much to many opposition from my own party. But as I said, that's the challenge of leaders, right? Sometimes we have to have the guts to choose unpopular positions. At that time, it was popular. At that time, it was unpopular in my own party. But now, they come to realize, oh yeah, that guy is not that stupid. You know, sometimes soldiers, we have the reputation of having no brains. Especially infantry. I was in the infantry, you know. The smart guys in the army, they always go to the engineers and the artillery. Those of us who are average, they send to the infantry. But now the developments in a certain part of the world where there is now open conflict, I will not say where, it's somewhere in Europe, the development of war tactics. Now, they say it is the return of the poor, bloody infantry. One infantryman can destroy a tank with a rocket, which costs only maybe $100,000, can destroy a tank which costs $5 million. So, I think I made the correct decision also at that time when I was young, joining the infantry. And as a former soldier, I realized the importance of food. I come now to a topic. My favorite topic actually is cassava. But this is also Bill Gates' favorite crop. I think cassava will prove to be the savior crop of the world. Indonesia, I think, can become the foremost producer of cassava, and cassava is the most efficient in the need for input, for water, etc., etc. If you see here, the input for cassava is quite efficient. Produces 250,000 calories, but only need 65, cubic meter of water per metric ton. Considers to rice, 1,139, wheat, 954, maize, 850. Very efficient. Cassava is now a strategic food crop. It can produce the replacement for wheat, for pasta, noodles, etc., bread. Here I've examples. This is already in production by our entrepreneurs. We are producing pasta from cassava. Instant noodles, rasa mie goreng, cassava, singkong. This Korean beef mushroom, cassava. We can produce bioethanol. We can produce alcohol, vitamin, bioflavonate, other products, bioplastics, glue, explosives, feed for cattle. Cassava, very efficient. We have seen that. Health benefits, 100% gluten-free. Low glycemic index, high in iron and calcium. I continue. I think I've taken a lot of the time. Cassava products already in the Indonesian market. Here we also see we already have the patents for modified cassava. We call it mocaf. We also have the intellectual property rights for the industrial processes. There's already a factory in Bangka producing cassava. I hope the inventor of mocaf, Professor Subagio, please stand up. I hope he's the cassava professor, I think the foremost in the world, working many years in Nigeria, in many parts of the world. And we see they're producing processes. There's also Mr. Fidrianto, an entrepreneur, a courageous entrepreneur who pioneered the industrial production of mocaf. So we also now starting producing our logistics strategic reserve. So let me conclude by how I see Indonesia's future role. I think we will be the #1 exporter of wheat flour equivalent, mocaf, from cassava. We will also be the #1 exporter of sustainable marine aquaculture production. We will be the #1 exporter of sustainable shrimp aquaculture production. We do not want to deplete the natural fish. We have to preserve it because we are the breeding ground for many of the fish of the world. We will also be the #1 exporter of sustainable lobster aquaculture production. So we will be in the forefront to produce protein and calorie in the world. We want to be a factor in solving global insecurity threat, and we invite partners from all over the world to join in. Can you imagine? 16 million hectares, how many combined harvesters, how many tractors, how many silos, how many railroads, how many harbors, how many technologies, how many scientists, how many water engineers that we can accept and we can absorb. So we are open. We invite all partners from around the world that I think we can be a factor for growth. Indonesia can perhaps be an additional factor in the growth of the world economy and in really providing solutions to overcome world hunger. In conclusion, you see, they did not give coffee here for me. If they give coffee, maybe I speak for another 2 hours. It is my opinion that I hold very strong to successfully handle the challenge. We need global peace and we need global partnership. We have to work together. If we can come to this, if we can reach out to our adversaries, if we can overcome past mistakes, if we can admit to ourselves that perhaps we have made some mistakes, and we can work in a global partnership, I think we can solve the problem. But, as I mentioned, in any country, without the cohesion, without the unity, without compromise, without cooperation amongst the national elite, there can be no national prosperity. To have prosperity, we need peace. That is the lesson of mankind history. I was a former soldier. I know the ravages of conflict. There is no benefit to war and conflict. Sometimes we are forced to. But as a former soldier, I realize we must avoid conflict. That does not mean that we must be defenseless. No. Apparently, humans as a species are very prone to domination and to take what is in front of them that is not protected and defended. That's the human nature. I think that concludes my remarks. Let us work together to achieve understanding, compromise. Hopefully, in this G20 in Bali, the name of Bali, of the Balinese people is Pulau Dewata, the island of the gods. So, we hope that there will be magic and miracles in the island of the gods. Let us work for peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.